Welcome back to another episode of the Positive Persistence Podcast, where we bring you stories to inspire you and strategies to help tap into your potential and become your best self. I'm your host, Ian Bowen, and today I am joined by my friend and fellow Fit Body owner, Matt Espeut. Now, I've known Matt for a couple of years now, actually, and we actually met through the Fit Body Bootcamp Mastermind Group. And we keep in touch, even though Matt is in Providence, Rhode Island on the East Coast, and I'm here in the middle of the country in Chesterton, Indiana. But Matt, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you having me, man. Super grateful to be here.
Absolutely. So, Matt, from afar, I see the high level of execution that you lead your team, that you lead your business, that you lead yourself. And that's really culminated to you being one of the top owners in the Fit Body Bootcamp brand. Now, I know that all of that didn't happen overnight. I know that, in fact, as we were talking about before we started recording, that in one of our mastermind calls, you shared your background and your story of triumph, as I'll call it. And that is nothing short of amazing. That story is filled with tenacity. That story is filled with grit. That story is filled with making good out of a bad situation. And I was hoping that you could share with our viewers and our listeners your story today and some of the pearls of wisdom that we can pull out of that story to implement ourselves to help move ourselves forward.
Yeah, I'd be great. Be happy to tell my story. It starts, obviously, we'll go way back to my humble beginnings, and I was born in 1968. So whenever I fill out a form and it's digital, I got to scroll all the way down to the bottom there till I hit the 1968. But anyway, my parents were young hippies, and they were 19, 20 years old. So obviously, the longevity of teenage marriages, right? So I grew up in a divorced household. They gave their best effort. They did what they could do with what they had. And, I just grew up in these tough streets of Central Falls, Rhode Island, which the biggest claim to fame back in the day, Central Falls. Now, let me give you a quick little history lesson here. It's I live in Providence, Rhode Island, which is the capital of Rhode Island, and Central Falls was the smallest city in Rhode Island, which happens to be the smallest state in the Union. So I grew up in a small town, and it was exactly 1 square mile. That's exactly how big Central Falls is, right? So no matter where you lived, you could walk to school in the snow, the rain, it didn't matter, right? So it was only a square mile. And the biggest notoriety in Central Falls as a young kid was it was the most populated as far as bars go. So there was like a bar room in every single corner. Like walking to school, there was a bar room on every single. So we had the most bars per square mile of any city in the country. And it was kind of a melting pot. My grandmother was Syrian. There was a lot of French, a lot of Polish immigrants. Like I said, it was really a kind of a melting pot. And then as my time came on Earth, there was more and more Spanish and Colombians and different different nationalities coming in. So Central Falls right now is predominantly a Spanish speaking city, but in any event, it was a melting pot. I grew up in family didn't have a lot of money growing up. Obviously, it was a small mill town, and it was right along the Blackstone River, so it was a very industrial town. So I grew up there as a young kid, and I bounced back and forth between my mother's and my dad's. My dad lived in Providence, and he was in the Navy at an early age, and then he got out and he opened up a flower shop, so he was a business owner. So that kind of influenced me, seeing my dad never having to really work for anybody and never having to, take orders from anybody. So, that was always my aspiration, was to be a business owner. And again, it was growing up in a small town, and like we just battled, every day just to get through it, right? It was, my parents. I always had food, I always had shelter, I always had heat. I can't give any hardships of, being in foster homes and all that stuff. Like, even though my story was not one of grandeur, I still was not abused, and I can't, fall back on any of those kind of tragedies that other people have had it a lot worse than me. So it kind of makes me
Right.
feel um, grateful to that level, that even though I did grow up poor and not having a lot of money, I was still able to survive without having any real adversity in my life. My parents were both loving parents. They just weren't like exactly the most responsible at 19 and 20, right? So I saw a lot
Hmm.
growing up. I heard a lot of things growing up, and fast forward to high school, and I I was a little bit of a rebellious kid in high school. I was actually pretty smart. Like when I applied myself, I did very well in high school. But the problem was I didn't apply myself. I was kind of like a punk kid, and I played some football and
Yeah.
done a little bit of sports, but that was that. Then when high school ended, I always worked, so I always had you know jobs, and I ruined a few jobs by I always had a criminal mind as well. So I've ruined a few jobs by with a criminal mind and stealing from my employers and stuff like that, and then moving on into my early 20s, I always had big aspirations, right? So, like, when, from a criminal enterprise mindset, I always went big, right? So, when I got out and I was out of high school, I actually got my GED before I graduated, right? So, when I went to summer school, I got my GED, and then
Hmm.
need to go back for my final year because I already had that piece of paper that was a GED. I took some college courses along the way, but I got mixed up with a bad element. I mean, fitness was a cornerstone in my life. I started working out when I was like 19 years old. Um, and then I joined a big box gym, this hardcore gym called World Gym in Providence, and every element that you read about in Rhode Island crime law used to work out at World Gym. So I got wrapped up with the wrong crowd over there, and hey, again, I took the action, so I'm not blaming the crowd I was with, but it fed into my next move, which was dealing drugs and marijuana. Not I wasn't like a cocaine or a heroin trafficker, but I was,
Hmm.
selling marijuana in large amounts, and I ended up getting caught and ended up doing some jail time in my early 20s. And that was kind of a wake up call for me because
Yeah.
as much as I was that element. I became that element. I was a criminal. I was selling drugs. I wasn't working. I mean, I did work while I was selling because I always had a hard work ethic. Right, my grandfather was a machinist and a Navy guy. My dad, worked hard, so I always had a good work ethic. But I always also wanted to make easy money too, and I always looked at the big picture, and I always went big with everything I did. So by doing that, ended up getting me in big trouble, right? And so you swing for the fences. Sometimes you're gonna hit a home run, but then other times you're gonna strike out. And after in
Yeah.
time, the odds were always against you as a criminal, and I ended up getting caught. So I did a couple of years in jail, and that was kind of um, a crossroads for me. That's when I realized that being incarcerated wasn't for me. Everybody in there was a victim. Nobody had any responsibilities. Nobody had any accountability for their actions. And in time, I started to realize, like, man, I put myself here. Like, not like the cops didn't put me in jail, right? They were just doing their job, right? It wasn't anybody's fault but my own. I came to realize at that point that that wasn't the life for me. I mean, I was having fun living like a gangster for a couple of years, and pockets full of money and clubbing and doing all this stuff, and money hand over foot. But it came crashing down really hard, and I did a lot of soul searching when I was in the inside. And when I came out, I said I'm gonna go cold turkey, totally straight. Like I used to have a black box with a steel cable. Like I took that out of my house. I wasn't even stealing cable anymore. That's how serious I was about flying straight. And that's where I had studied to be a real estate agent and to become a personal trainer. So I actually did both as soon as I got out. And then,
Okay.
I decided that I just wanted to stay on that positive path. And that's kind of where the ball got rolling for me. So.
Yeah. So you were training people in the gym and slanging some marijuana at the same time.
Well, this was actually before I was personal training. So basically,
You were just working out at the gym.
yeah, I was working out at the gym, and I was noticing guys in there with a clipboard. and they taking note. And I'm like, what are these people doing in here? And they're like, oh, they're personal trainers. I was like, oh, you can get paid
Yeah.
to train people? I was like, that sounds like a good deal for me. So I started studying. Actually started studying for my personal trainer exam while I was slinging some drugs and stuff. And then I got caught, and I was
Yeah.
just like, that was part of my plea, to let me out. I was like, hey, I'm studying to be a personal trainer. Just like, yeah. He goes, yeah. He goes, well, you have plenty of time to study. So so that was not a good way to get out of the sentence that I was handed down. So while I was in
Right.
there, I studied for real estate and I studied for personal training. I read a lot of gangster books too, so I learned how to be a better criminal if that was the case, if that was the road I wanted to take. But I decided that
Right.
I wasn't going that route. So, like I said, a lot of free time. I did a lot of reading. And when I got out, I said, I'm going to take this personal trainer exam. I'm going to pass it, and I'm going to become a personal trainer. And I passed it the second time. Actually, first time I didn't pass it because I'm really not that book smart, right? So I had to take it twice at MIT over here in Boston. So they were giving
Yeah.
administering the exam there, and I passed it the second time.
So tell us what that was like after you got out of jail. You're like, all right, I'm going on the straight and narrow. I'm going to become a personal trainer. That's the thing I'm going to do. And then you don't pass the test, right? You
Mm,
you you failed the test. So what's your headspace like? Because all of us have been in some situation in our lives where we're fighting for something or we're planning for something and it just doesn't go our way. And now we need to figure something else out. So where were you at in terms of your mindset when you got to the end of that test and it said fail?
mm. Yeah,
What
good
was it?
question.
What was it going to be
Hindsight's
next for you?
20/20 because looking back on it now, I realize, hey, I didn't prepare enough the first time. Second time, I said I'm going all in. I'm just gonna block off like a few hours a night, and I'm gonna get serious about preparing. I was always, Ian. I always got kind of lucky where my ability got me by a lot. My work ethic and hard work and my ability and
Mhm.
certain stuff like that. So a lot of times I got by without doing the preparation, which obviously as well as anybody else knows that only goes so far, right? So you got to prepare. And matter of fact, I listened to this podcast. You're familiar with Alex Hormozy, and he says like your level of
Mhm.
preparation relates to your level of success, right? So as soon as
Yeah.
I found out I failed, I was like, you know what? When's the next one? Signed up for the next one right away. I was working for my dad at the time because I kind of had an ankle bracelet on. I had just been released, and I was working for my dad at his flower shop. And I said, Dad, I just need some
Yeah.
more time, at night to go and study. I said, I love you and I want to, help you out in the business, but this is not what I want to do. I'm not taking over the family business. This is my dream here is to be a personal trainer. So I took it the second time and I passed it.
That's awesome. So now you passed. So basically, you just buckled down. You said, "All right, didn't work out the first time. This is still my dream. I'm not going to let anything get in my way. So what I need to do is simple. I need to go back and I need to study more. I need to study harder. I need to dig in a little bit deeper to be able to get some traction on this dream that I have."
Yeah, failure is feedback. Again, back then I was a little more rational. I was like, I'm just gonna quit everything and just study for. Like, I still knew that that's what I wanted to do, but then I took a step back
Yeah.
and said, all right, listen, I can do it. I just gotta block out the time. And I've always been persistent like that. Like, if you whip me in a fight, I'd like want to fight you again. You know what I mean? It's just like I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't be like, oh, he's tougher than me. I'm just gonna forget. No, no, no. We're going again, baby. We're going again, right? So I was always
Yeah.
like that. Like, if I couldn't do something the first time, I go back and try it again. It was the same thing with like I got into mountain bike racing, and my first race. I blew a tire like a mile from the finish line. I watched a few people pass me. I'm like, I should have won that race. I'm coming back with a vengeance. I trained harder, and man, I won every race that summer. Like I even bumped up a division because I was just like on fire about that. So that's the thing. If I fail something once, a lot of people would quit and say, "Hey, maybe this isn't for me. This isn't my forte." But nah, not me, man.
Yeah.
I'll go back. Same thing. I did boxing. I did Golden Gloves. I lost a fight, and I just trained harder. I came back and I whipped the same kid again. You know what I mean? That beat me the first time. So it's just like,
Right.
and it's all due to lack of preparation. Like, when we fail at something and we don't do something that we set our hearts out to do it, it's usually our fault, and it's usually because we didn't prepare enough, right? So, my real estate exam, I made sure I didn't fail that. I studied that hard, right? And then come to find out that, like, the cliff notes are all like in the middle of the book, right? And I just read the whole book over and over again, and I over prepared for it. But I passed my real estate exam on the first try. So, that's just a lesson to anybody listening, that when you take something seriously, your level of preparation is going to dictate a level of success, or the outcome of success versus failure.
Yeah. Yeah. Words to live by. So, man, I want to ask you. So, you talked about, your resiliency, coming back in Golden Glen and boxing and in mountain bike riding. Like, if things didn't go your way, you didn't just walk away. You doubled down on your effort, and you had this, sounds like this innate yearning to do your very best and know that you did. So where did that come from for you? Like, why does that bubble up to the surface for you when you kind of have a chip on your shoulder in terms of, if I don't feel I did my best and because of that I lost or I failed, I'm coming back and I'm coming back even harder. Where does that come from for you?
That's a good question, Ian, because my parents always taught me never be a quitter. My grandfather, World War II veteran, and he used to tell me some stories, and grew up on the mean streets of Brooklyn, and just like it was just in my bloodline, I think, just to not to be a quitter, always to work hard. And, again, even though I did go the wrong path and try to make that easy money, I had my first job. I was working for my dad when I was younger, and I had my first job working in a meat locker, like a meat packaging plant, like freezing cold, and all my friends were out hanging out. I was working, like, so I always had that focus and that drive to just be a little bit better than I was. I don't know if it was because I grew up poor, I had a chip on my shoulder. And when I say poor, like I told you earlier, like we always had food, we always had shelter, we always had the bare necessities, provided
Mhm.
for us. But did my
Yeah.
parents have brand new cars? No. Did we live in like one family houses with the white picket fences? No. We lived in apartments. So I'm saying that we scraped and clawed and got by, and always had gifts at Christmas time and all that stuff. So I just think it was part of the way I was bred, I was brought up, and it was just like just to be tough, man, and never, because quitting gets you nowhere, right? So even when I was playing baseball and I didn't, they switched coaches, I still hung it out, I didn't quit, and when I didn't like my boss at work, my dad was like, "You're not quitting your job, like." I'm not paying for your car insurance and all that stuff. That's stuff that you got to take
Yeah.
care of. So
Right.
I think that's all part of it. I think it was kind of baked into me as a youth growing up. But I could have easily gone the wrong way too, because a lot of my classmates are still sitting on bar stools in Central Falls right now too. So I think it's seeing and just kind of understanding the difference of success and failure, because I lived in kind of two types of environments. Like Central Falls was not very. I mean, hey, listen, there are a lot of kids I went to high school, graduated, that are very successful as well. So it was like a 50-50 shot whether you were going to make it out of Central Falls or not, right? So I didn't like those odds. I wanted to be in the good 50%, right? So
Okay.
I just think that seeing, and then when I went into my dad's, his friends were a little more successful. He was running his own business, and I said, I saw the two different lifestyles, and I chose the one that appealed to me, and it wasn't sitting on a bar making up excuses and wallowing about being a victim all day long. So I think that's where I got it from.
So you really subscribe to the idea of being really accountable for yourself. Like it begins with me, it ends with me. And if it is to be, it's up to me kind of mindset.
Yeah, and again, I'm so far even further along than I used to be. Like again, I always played, hey, I'll just never get a break. I'll never be rich. So it's like I try to force it to make it happen, right? So again, with the drug dealing and all this other stuff, and even though when I got out and I started making an honest living, personal training, right? So when I got out, I found this big box gym. They were still putting sheetrock on a Gold's Gym. They were still sheetrocking the walls, and I kept going every day, saying, "Hey, man, I just want to." And the guy's like, all right, we're gonna hire you. All right, just stop coming and getting in the way of the contractors, right?" So,
Right.
and then my first year, I mean, we're talking back in 2000, and where's my certification? I got certified in 2000 and 1994. So you're talking back then, 1994. I was, got on the can, and like within a year, I was making 60 grand a year. So back then, that was pretty decent money. So, and then when I got into
Yeah.
real estate, I hit it at the right time, and I was like the Midas touch. I was rolling and just flipping properties until the real estate market crashed, and then that took me into a different chapter in my life where there was, again, I had that victim mindset. Oh, the market killed me, and I almost went bankrupt. And but then, I realized that nobody on the white horse is coming to save me, so I got to get out of this too. And I did. I didn't go bankrupt. I was like hundreds of thousands of dollars. I went from having hundreds of thousands of dollars liquid money in my bank that I could actually see, touch, and feel to being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. That's what the real estate market can either make you or break you really quickly, right? So it made me for a while, and then it broke me really quickly. And I said, I'm just going to grind it out, do what I got to do to get by. I went back into construction and did some renovations, and I just did
Yeah.
what I had to do because, like I said, there's nobody on a white horse coming to save me, and just knowing that kind of put my back against the wall, and when my back's against the wall, I'm coming out swinging.
Right. Yeah. And I love that. And so, what I'm hearing is that you had multiple times in your life where you were up here and then life happened. Boom. You're down here in this valley. Living life, jail time. Boom. Then you're back up, living life. I'm making money being a personal trainer. I'm making money in the real estate game. And the life happens. Boom. Back down in this valley where everything is basically taken from you. Where does the resilience, where does the hope come from that you are not just broken? Because for a lot of people, that would be like, man, life has it out for me. Like I can't win. But you decided to find a way, and you had it within you to bounce back. So where does that, like, how can you, I guess, explain to our listeners and viewers, how do you bounce back from some life situations that would literally break most people in half?
Yeah. I mean, hope's a four-letter word, man. Hope you got to follow that with action too. So it was, after that real estate market crash, and I lost a ton of money. I was back to personal training, and that's like 2014. I got myself out of the debt I was in. I was paying high interest, rates on credit cards, and I had borrowed some money from a friend of mine, and I just did what I had to do to pay all that back. And 2014, I was at this point where I was dipping into my savings to live. I was doing some personal training at a big box gym at a couple hours a day, doing some bath. I said, listen, I got to figure something out. And at that time, I had already got like involved in self development, and I was going to because when you ACE certified, you need 20 hours of classroom uh, credits a year just to maintain your certification, right? So I was like, I'm not going to let this certification go. And I was always going to like conferences, like big conferences, like in New York and Miami, and ran into some great experts and some great pros. So I was pretty well versed, and I loved the self development and all that. But let's get back to after I had kind of looked at my bank account and said, listen, I got about 6 months to figure something out here. I got like 24 grand. I remember the number 24 grand because I had 25 and I needed 1,000 to pay my bills that month. And I said, I got 24 grand left in the bank. I said, I'm going to go fly out to the West Coast. I'm either going to find a job or something that's going to give me some purpose there. Or I'm going to find something that we don't have here. And I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to start something brand new from scratch. Now, needless to say, even though I worked for myself as a personal trainer, I had no business plan. I had no business knowledge. I had no money. I had credit, but no money. And like basically all this time I kept saying, I got to own a gym. I got to own a gym. I got to own a gym. Long story short, I went to Fitness Business Summit, and I said, I don't even know it, but this is what I need to do. Fit Body Boot Camp. They were selling Fit Body Boot Camp. And the reason I went to Fitness Business Summit, I had like 5 different personal growth conferences laid out on my desk because they used to come with flyers in the mail, right? So I
Yeah.
had them all laid out, and all the speakers were on it. And the Fitness Business Summit had uh, Randy Couture, one of the original MMA guys there, Randy Couture. And I said, all right,
Hmm.
I've been watching him fight, Ken Shamrock, Tito Ortiz, like those are the guys that started this whole MMA thing, right? I said, all right, I'm going to go out. I'm going to see Randy Couture. I'm going to spend 10 days in California. I'm going to find myself. I'm going to figure something out. That was my first weekend there. I went to Fitness Business Summit. I said, this is the deal I want. And, you're an OG in the brand for a while, but remember when it was like $2,000 down and it was like a $10,000 buy-in? That's basically, I put $2,000 as my expression of interest on the credit card. And
Yeah.
I even dropped in. I don't know if he remembers this, but I even dropped in on HQ unannounced to see if this Bedros guy was for real. I said, I don't know, man. This guy's selling these things, and my buddy was Syrian, and Bedros was Armenian. I'm half Syrian too, and I said, listen, like we're from lines of hustlers here and all that stuff. I said, let's go check this guy Bedros out and vet this guy out, right? So we showed up at the HQ, sat down, talked to him. My buddy's like, nah, man, it seems like a pretty good dude. It seems like a pretty legit business, like. So, and that's where on a credit card, and again, hope is a four-letter word, but on a lot of hope, I I started Fit Body Boot Camp. I went out there in March. I signed a lease. I'm sitting in my office right now. I signed a lease in June, and I opened my doors the end of September. So it was like within a 6 month, 9 month turnaround that I showed interest and I did it. And that's always the way I've been. I was like, let's jump out of this plane. Let's try to build a parachute on the way down. I'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
you talked about, again, one of these days I'm going to write a graph and I'm going to draw out my life in the graph, because the way you just described it was very visual for me. Um, that was tough too. I mean, that was a struggle too. I like not knowing anything.
Yeah.
I took on independent trainers to rent space for me, which was a big no-no back then. And I was like, I just need somebody to pay half my rent, and this can help me out. Why not? I have a hybrid type of location. I'd be running boot camps while these other trainers were training people in the same room, and it's just like, looking back, it was a shit show, but I got through it, And then obviously I was riding high. I was doing pretty good. I've gone through a few, staff members, employees, different stuff, and then COVID hit, So there's another valley.
Yeah. That was a rough one.
Yeah. I mean, I remember
But here
walking out of
you,
the house in January of 2021, and my girlfriend saying, "How are you gonna make payroll? You got like $3,000 left in your checking account." I was like, "Well, what's payroll?" She's like $4,000. I was like, at the time, I was like, "I don't know, I don't know." And then the next day, a PPL or whatever check came in. I was like, "Thank God,"
right.
because
Yeah.
you know,
And now you've built your business back. You've built a team back. I mean, you have a slew of like accreditations that are in your history, in your past, like being named the personal trainer of the year. It's pretty awesome. Tell us
well,
a little bit
yes,
about that.
mastermind of the year. I did that. I got that. I didn't do personal trainer of the year. Yeah, Todd Durkin. I got an award in his group too. Yeah, yeah. So I was just thinking fit body stuff, but yeah, I did in another networking group I'm part of as well. Yeah.
So all of like your story is so amazing to me because you have a lot of highs, but you have also a lot of lows. So what is the constant is that you bounce back,
Mm,
right? And people say that, when you have resiliency, you bounce back. But one of my mentors, I've heard her say this, is that resiliency is not about bouncing back, it's about bouncing forward.
I love
And
that.
that's exactly what you have been able to do time and time again, is that you bounce forward. So I
Mm.
was wondering if you could kind of unpack a little bit of the mind of Matt and tell us, like, what are the steps for you when shit hits the fan and you have to take some action? Is there any point to where it is, woe is me, why is this happening to me? Or is it just snap directly into action? Well, okay, this just went down. I need to fix this, and I'm going to do anything and everything I can to get it done.
Mm.
How does that work for you?
So when we were first going through COVID, one of my team members, she goes, "You're built for this," and I was just like, "Wow!" I took that like as a big compliment. And there was another instance where I was going through. I was training for this death race, this Spartan death race, which was similar to this thing I did with the project. I don't know if you see that banner behind me. There was a 75-hour Navy SEAL training thing, but the death race was something similar. It was a 75-hour and I was second guessing myself, and I was really like my knee was torn, and then one of my coaches said, he says, yeah, but you're Coach Matt, you can do anything. And I was like, damn, man, like these people are right. Like I got some sort of an image to uphold, that I don't quit. And sometimes by people having expectations in you, brings out the best in you as well. Because
Yeah.
for some reason I don't realize how I did it, but like I said, when this person said, you're built for this, man. I've seen you go through tougher situations than this, and and then when I look back and I'm like, I'm built to bend, but I don't break, right? So to your question of the mindset, is because I've had a lot of the same training that you have had. We've got similar mentors, I'm sure, in the industry, and listening to like Bedros, and going to the World Conference and listening to these high powerful speakers, and it just
Mhm.
kind of sets in that when you sometimes say why me, you say why not me, right? A perfect case
Yeah.
is like sometimes when I'm driving to work and I have to come and open up, and I don't do that too often anymore. I got a great team that I'm not a big morning person, so to say. I don't like the morning. I've tried to like it, and I've tried to not compartmentalize and give myself a label and say but you know, getting up
Yeah.
at 5:30 is good. Getting up at 4 is a little bit of a stretch. So I'll be driving down, all the lights in the city will be dark, people will be sleeping. I'll be like, why me? Why do I got to get up so early to earn a living when all these other people get to sleep? But then I'll see a trash truck or something like that, and I'll be like, why not me? These guys are out working already, right? Why not me? Who the hell am I to feel that I'm entitled to an easy life, right? And when I think like that, like why not me? Then it's the gloves come off, man, and it's just all holds barred at that, no holds barred at that time, right? So that's
Right.
what gives me that capacity and that drive, because I've been doing this for 10 years, and I'm not the brightest lamp on the porch, right? But I just know that by following the process and taking things like, and again, a lot of this is hindsight. I had to learn this along the way, right? Where it's like you just get on base, get on base, get on base, just keep getting on base, and keep, you overestimate what you can do in a year, but you underestimate what you can do in like 3 or 4 years, right? So um, the what keeps me going when I'm in that valley of despair is that, listen, I got these two hands, I got these two legs, I got a little bit left up here, and it's not totally burnt out by now, right? It's
Right.
like when you travel. If you have a credit card and a cell phone, you can go anywhere in the world, right? Well, a credit card, a cell phone, and a passport to go anywhere in the world, but
Yep. Yeah.
there's nothing that can stop you, right? So as long as I have my mental capacity, my physical capacities, again, I'm not maybe, hey, I'm not as savvy as like an Ed Milet. Obviously, guys worth $1 billion, right? Or Alex Hormozy. So those guys got something inside, another gear that takes them to that next level, right? They have that um, underlying like persistence where, hey, I'm probably won't ever be a billionaire because I'm not really trying to, right? So, but to run a successful business and to try to be an influence on people and try to impact other people's lives, and just try to live a better quality of life for myself, that's certainly within my limits.
I love that you just said that. That is certainly within your limits because we all are capable of doing amazing things. And I believe that. I believe that we all have the potential, we all have the ability to do what we usually think is unthinkable. To be able to blast through limiting beliefs, be able to conquer any kind of challenges that are in our way that stop us from living out our dreams. And you are a testament of that, man. I mean, you've just told the story of all of the things that have gone wrong in your life, but here you sit as a successful businessman and a successful person because you didn't give up on you. Like you were the one constant that always bounced back, bounced forward, as I'll say, and you relied on yourself, never doubted yourself, and always thought that why not me?
Yeah. I just thought of a
Why
great
me?
quote to come up with. I just came up with, right. And beyond the why not me is that generally the difference between success and failure is that 5 minutes that you take and talk yourself out of quitting, right? So everybody wants to quit, man. I don't care who you are. Everybody's had that. Like, why am I doing this? Like, this is just be so much easier just to throw in the towel. Like, this is, too stressful or dealing with a team, whatever. There's been hundreds of times, like, just like doing the project, doing the death race. Like, I've wanted to quit and all those things of like, why am I beating myself up like this, right? And I, say the same thing in business sometimes. And it's just like, sometimes you sit down and just take that 5 minutes to talk yourself out of quitting. And that's usually the difference, right? A lot of people don't give themselves that 5 minutes and they just make a permanent decision based on a temporary feeling. And being
Right.
able to um, defer that feeling, right? Being able to defer that action of quitting, right? Because quitting is an action too, right? Like when you quit, you obviously got to pull the plug on something, right? So that is an action step, right? So to me, it's like I'd rather take that action step and take that 5 minutes and just tell me myself why I can't quit. Right? Quitting is such a horrible word. And Navy SEAL once told me this. He goes, if you ever quit something, he goes, picture yourself with a big red tattoo across your forehead that says, I'm a quitter. And try looking at yourself every day in the mirror in the morning when you do that. And that's just not in the cards right now for me. So
That's a hard pill to swallow. Absolutely.
it would be.
Now, Matt, you wrote a book, and the title of that book was it Unleash Your Potential?
Unleash your full potential. Yep.
Unleash Your Full Potential. Can you give our listeners and our viewers, and we probably have talked about some of the things that are in that book, but what do you think is the one of the main driving points of that book? Because what I'd like to do is drive people to Amazon to pick that book up, because that's an important book to have in your library.
And it's an easy read. So I kind of wrote the book by accident, if that makes any sense. But I was given an opportunity from a local publication called Go Local Prov to write an article, right? And this is how a lot of things start in my life. It's like a one-time thing that like ends up morphing into like a career type of move. Happened with football coaching, right? I got certified through Martin Rooney, and I was like, hey, let me try this. A friend of mine was a high school football coach. I'm like, let me try this workout on your team. Next thing you know, 7 years later, I'm working with the team and coaching them, right? So I was writing this article for Go Local Prov, and I submitted one, and the owner of the platform said, "Hey, man, people like that article. Would you be willing to do it again? Would you be willing to contribute?" I was like, "Sure," And then every week, again, this is part of my personality. Is every week I was right there on point with an article, and the article could be anything that I could have a conversation with somebody that week and be like, "Hey, you just made a good point, and I'll write an article about it." Right. So I had like a year and a half's worth of these short articles, and somebody said, "Hey, why don't you edit that, compile those, and put them in one place and publish a book?" I was like, me? A book? Like Central Falls Dropout, that no education? And I didn't realize like you could self-publish a book. I didn't have, some major label come and ask me to write a book.
Yeah.
So I did. I just put the book together, and I had my girlfriend Melody's mom, who's a teacher. I said, can you take a quick look and edit this? And she made some edits, and lo and behold,
There it
Unleashed
is.
Potential was born. And it's a lot of little, I think let's see, there's three different sections of it. There's one about, just the mental components of it. And then there's the physical component, and then there's a little bit of business. So I got it broken down into three sections here. And yeah, what the section one is mindset and spirit, mind and spirit. Section two is body and fitness, and then section three is diet and nutrition, right? So I just broke down the articles. Now I still currently write for them, and I probably have enough to write another book. And I'm gonna wait because I have a goal I want to hit in my business, kind of a credibility on my part goal, and then I'm gonna start a whole new uh, endeavor. Like I want to be more. I want to do more like you do with the public speaking, and just maybe be a consultant and coach to other owners that are struggling. I said a great quote at the mastermind at the World Conference when I was nominated for the Masterminder of the Year. Is that we need to be able to help the people we once were when we were struggling, right? That's the best way you can help somebody, right? I can't help somebody balance a budget. I've never done that, right? But I can help somebody that's gone through a lot of the crap I've gone through and help them come out, the other side's, smelling like roses here, right? So,
Right.
yeah, so I probably do have enough material to write another book. But for right now, this is the one I have. And again, it's a very quick read. It's like each chapter is like a page or two, and it just gives you a little bit of mindset. And I've got some good feedback from it. I actually, a funny story was, I have a parking lot. I park usually on the other side of the lot. And this guy comes walking around the edge of the building, and he goes, "You Matt?" And I was like, "Well, it depends. Who are you? Like, you a federal agent or whatever, something I don't know
Yeah.
about?" And he's like, "No, man." He goes, "I just want to tell you that you don't know me, but I read your book and I read your articles, and just because of you, I lost 20 pounds." And I was like, "You never stepped foot in my gym. I don't even know you." He's like, "Yeah, I know." He goes, "But just you sit in my head." So at least I know I impacted one person, but I know I have impacted more. So a lot of people. So I brought him in.
Yeah.
I gave him, like, signed a copy of my book, and I gave him a copy of my book. So um, yeah,
Man, that is the best compliment. That is the best type of interaction you can ever have, is having somebody let you know that you impacted their lives, and because of that, their life is better.
yeah, and they didn't even I
That's
don't even know the person.
amazing.
That's the best part of it, because when you're in front of people and we're on the floor here, like, we're making assumptions that, like, hey, we're like in these people's faces, and they get great results, and I can see the results happening in front of me, and like, but when you don't know that you're doing it, it's like, wow, that's like pretty cool.
That is. That is, man. Well, man, I want to thank you, man, for jumping on with us today. I know that you are a busy man running a very successful gym out there in Providence, Rhode Island, and thank you for sharing your story and some great pearls of wisdom that our listeners and our viewers can take and implement into their lives, especially just the mindset piece and what you said about helping other people. I think it's Ed Milet also said that you are the most qualified to help the people that you once were. And, that is something that I aim to do. And I know that's something that you aim to do as well as you start to step into the public speaking, which you're already starting to do. So it'll be fun to watch your career take off. And if it's anything like the rest of your life, I'm sure that you are going to be barreling in with both barrels and you were going to explode onto the scene. So it's going to be interesting to watch and see. So I wish you all the best with that and continued success out there on the East Coast.
I just want to thank you, man, for inviting me. I was honored when you did it a couple weeks ago when we just got our schedules together and was able to do this. So, I'm just grateful that you gave me the opportunity, and I just hope that I can provide some valuable content to you and your listeners, and you get some good feedback on this episode.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again. And I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers for tuning in. And as you guys know, we always end with saying that it is our goal that to help you be positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything. We'll see you next time.
Let's go, baby. Have a great day.